Welcome to the Scariest Things Podcast, episode 14, your gateway to horror films, where we talk the trends and tropes of the genre. This episode, we're talking gateway movies.
Yes.
Specifically, PG and PG-13 movies.
The ultimate gateway.
Right. So this is the soft entry.
There is something fundamentally not scary about the number 14. The 14 is like the softest, most easygoing. It's like an even number.
We could have opened up the PG-13 on episode 13. Would have been nice, but
there's a nice alliteration to that we did not.
The stars were not right.
We did not think through that clearly, obviously.
So something that we've been talking about here is gateway films. How to get those of you who are scaredy cats,
yes,
or want to bring your children in on the horror fest,
also known as indoctrination.
That's right. Where you drew a chalk circle with a pentagram, put candles in there, and then you sacrifice a cat.
Yeah,
it's pretty easy actually,
or a dog, or whatever you got laying around. Guinea pig will work.
So. One of the obvious entries is, is it good for my kids? PG movies, historically, safe for kids, but there are some scary ones out there. Quiz for you, Mr. Campbell.
Yes, lay it on me.
Do you know when the MPAA actually introduced the
PG-13?
PG. The whole, when they instituted the whole rating system.
Yeah, I think it was 1968.
Ding! Yes, it was 1968. And do you know?
Because I know. Planet of the Apes, I think, had a G rating, which is weird because it's,
they really didn't figure out the rating system for about 6 or 7 years when it really kind of settled in.
There was G, and then there was a GP rating.
It started out and they gave G, M, R, and X. Then they replaced M with GP,
X with NC-17, X with triple X.
Yeah. X was the
triple X with triple X.
Right. Usually, also, that owned by pornography. However, there were some X-rated horror movies, or that you could have gotten. At the time, there were real legit movies that got the X rating, like the Midnight Cowboy.
I think Last House on the Left had
Last
X
Tango
rating.
in Paris.
Last Tango in Paris. I'm pretty sure Clockwork Orange had
Clockwork Orange was an X rating.
X rating,
because the pornography hadn't really caught on that they could use that. And then eventually in the 70s they started throwing the triple X rating at it, and Hollywood gave up at that point.
Although, all the way at the other end of the spectrum is
the G rating.
The G rating, and 2001: A Space Odyssey was also a G-rated film, which is kind of bizarre to think of. But then if you really sort through the whole G rating concept, I guess the violence at the beginning.
There's
with the
bludgeoning. It doesn't make sense.
It's pretty dark, but I don't think it's a G-rated film. At a minimum, by today's standards, we're talking PG-13.
Do you know what the first what triggered the MPAA to?
What was the movie?
There were a couple of big movies that had come out, and that
Who Shot Liberty Valance?
No, it was Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, right.
And that all of a sudden, that movie and the European New Wave movies that started talking realistically about sex.
Right.
And
I didn't realize it was Bonnie and Clyde.
That got a lot of people concerned because...
What did they ultimately give Bonnie and Clyde? Was that an R rating?
They eventually did give it an R rating. Okay. After the fact, it got an R rating. Similarly, Psycho, they went back and gave Psycho an R rating.
Sure.
The Psycho was in 1960.
Well deserved.
And I think Night of the Living Dead eventually came back with an R rating. And initially, it didn't have a rating.
Right.
So because it was released in 68, and so it...
Sure. Yeah.
But I think it's fairly well understood that as soon as the floodgates opened, the horror genre took serious advantage of the R rating. I think you had some of the most brutal movies that have ever been done came out as the result of the MPAA allowing for visceral gore and violence and nudity and a lot of things that were just stopping points before, and so you'd have things like Last House on the Left in 1972. You had The Exorcist. You had some really
Texas Chainsaw
75.
Yeah,
so
74.
So four,
I think 4.
Yeah, but you realize how short a time period it was before it went from not much violence at all, very little bloodshed, to tearing people up. Right.
And of course, the ultimate paradox quote comes from Jack Nicholson, where he famously once said, "If you show a nipple, it's rated R, but if you chop it off, it's PG."
What was that in reference to?
I don't know what he was talking about, other than just sort of the non-parody of sex and violence in cinema, and how the MPAA always really deferred more to violence than the sort of prudish, squeamish American sensibilities with regard to the boob.
Yeah. Well, okay, so do you have a guess as to what would have been the first R-rated movie?
The first R-rated movie?
I would have never guessed.
Oh gosh, first R-rated movie, 1970. I Drink Your Blood.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh,
and then the next one was Blow Up.
Oh, interesting.
So it wasn't the violence. It was the sex and the language.
Right.
So
Blow Up, footnote, awesome soundtrack by The Yardbirds, featuring Mr. Jeff Beck on guitar.
Yeah, I mean, that was the era. I think what was happening was that the MPAA found that the 60s culture, with the transformation of society at that time, everything was getting pushed to the edge, and they realized they couldn't. That young people, if they wanted, they were losing their audience to television, and that one of the ways to get them back was to allow movies to do more.
Right.
So
is Jack Valenti still alive?
Yeah, I don't think he's dead yet. I mean, we would have gotten sort of an in memoriam in one of the Oscars things,
right? But, yeah.
No, but
Speaking of in memoriam, we might get to in memoriam later on.
Yeah. I have a beef with that.
Growl. So before we get into Gateway, I know we've talked a little bit about. I can't remember which episode it was, but we talked a little bit about the first movie you saw, like the first creature feature movie, which isn't necessarily a gateway film, but the first one you stumbled onto and you went, "Holy crap! This is terrifying and exciting and titillating and worrisome."
Something that I deliberately sought out to want to watch because it was
something
scary.
You went, "Wait a second, I got to see this for reasons X, Y, and Z."
You remember what mine was?
Well, I remember you said The Thing was like one of the first. That was I don't know if that was the gateway, but that was maybe what broke the mold.
Yeah, that was the one that set me as a horror movie fan for life. Right. But the first time where I went and saw, actually, I've got a couple of movies. King Kong was one, and then the other one though that was
a great gateway film.
Yeah, fantastic gateway film. Jaws was the other one.
Oh yeah,
and I think Jaws is one of those testers.
Yeah.
It really pushed the limit of what PG was, because you'll remember PG-13 didn't show up till 1984, and due to a slew of Spielberg movies, including Jaws, but Gremlins, which he produced,
The Duel.
The Duel wasn't super popular, so it didn't make waves. But Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Poltergeist, right? So these were heavy movies that really forced the MPAA's hand and said, maybe we got to have another cut. Right. So now I don't think you will find any straight horror movies nowadays that are rated
straight PG. Up PG.
Because anything with any violence or a death is going to put you into the PG-13 marker. I think that there's the PG that exists now is pretty much live action G-rated movies from back in the day, because I think
it's that. I mean, we've talked about that in the past in previous episodes too. It's that sort of compression of R to G, and basically everything is getting squished into PG-13 to accommodate the family, right? Yep. So like the PG film doesn't even really exist anymore, because ultimately the film that's going to excite dad or mom maybe has a little bit of potty humor to bring in brother and sister, and then a little bit of violence to bring in dad. And
that's PG-13. That's the money-making spot.
That's the money-making spot that's been compressed. And so there's very few of the hard R. G doesn't really exist anymore.
No, I think your Pixar movies are taking up the PG.
Yeah.
That they occupy that space. And it's usually because there's some fart humor or something like that in there. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you're PG.
Right. The last G movie I saw, which was actually pretty good, was the remake, or not, I guess it's not a remake, it was sort of the reimagination of Charlie Brown. This was like 2014, 2015. It's actually a pretty solid film, and it was G, and there wasn't any snark, and there wasn't any potty humor, and so it was good. But we're not here to talk about Woodstock and Peppermint Patty and anything of that ilk.
Oddly enough, though,
scary stuff.
After we just sort of described that PG-13 is where Hollywood tries to throw their biggest money makers.
Right.
It isn't where the best horror movies typically reside, because in order to be scary, the amount of violence or implied violence that usually gets tied into it. And so there have been a number of movies that they try to pitch at PG-13 to draw in a big audience, and it hasn't worked. Like The Forest and The Boy last year. Back-to-back movies with known actresses that had decent-looking productions. They were just boring. And that they would do things where they would try and do jump scares with loud violin screeches and stuff like that to compensate for the fact that they're not lopping heads off.
Right. Well, and I think, as I was doing my research too, I found that there was a pretty significant number of PG, sort of scary type PG films in the 70s, 80s, and even the early part of the 1990s, while the MPAA was still trying to figure out this stuff, and they knew that there was a tween market that they needed to tap into, and of course this was all pre-DVD, pre-streaming, pre-YouTube, etc. And so you still had that market for teens that wanted to go to a movie and wanted to see something scary, but obviously because of the draconian nature of the MPAA, they couldn't get into...
Or the draconian nature of your parents.
Or your parents, or the crappy person at the movie theater who wouldn't let me see Angel. Straight A student by day, prostitute by night, jerk. Anyway, so you had a lot of that kind of stuff. Now I don't think anybody there's no rhyme or reason to try to calibrate to a tween audience, because chances are that tween has already seen rated R or NC-17 or even X stuff at this point.
Yeah, well,
so if my son is listening, you are not allowed to see any of that stuff.
Either of the sons, but the one who's actually curious, not yet son.
Yes.
So, but I'm optimistic here for Blumhouse.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing, I'm going to lead off here with my number 4.
Number 4
of the fearsome foursome.
The fearsome foursome, all right? Lay it on us.
PG-13 movie that came out last year.
Ooh,
and I
what?
saw it. And
PG-13 movie came out in 2017.
And it was fun, and it was scary, and it tried to be scary. It's...
you just debunked my entire theory.
That's what I was getting to. Is I think that this is a Blumhouse production. This is Happy Death Day.
Oh,
which I don't think you've seen yet.
No, I haven't. That was PG-13.
It's PG-13. You wouldn't have thought it.
Good job, Happy Death Day.
And it's Groundhog's Day,
right?
But with
no Bill Murray.
No Bill Murray, and actually it's probably a stronger tie to Edge of Tomorrow, which was the Tom Cruise one,
right.
Where he dies over and over again, and because it's Tom Cruise, you love seeing him die over and over again.
Who doesn't? Except the Church of Scientology, which I think we talked about in another episode.
It must have. I don't know, but has Tom Cruise ever? He's done any horror movies? Interview with a Vampire.
Interview with a Vampire. Eyes Wide Shut has some horrific pieces and parts, but no.
Yeah, but
I say no.
Anyways, but that one was where Bill Murray went to bed and woke up and had to repeat his day.
Right.
Edge of Tomorrow, Tom Cruise's character died and had to start over again and learn from his mistakes.
Right.
So in this one, Jessica Roth, who was fabulous in this production, she's beautiful. And she's got this rubbery face that's super expressive, and I think she's got this big character arc swing. So she plays Tree Gelbin, who is your prototype bitchy and beautiful sorority girl, and she finds herself waking up in a complete stranger's dorm room. There's some young guy there, and she goes, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Well, you were so drunk last night, I had to take you home to make sure you're okay." And she was like, "Ah, you son of a bitch, I'm out of here. I don't know you. I don't want anything to do with you."
Oh, Tree.
Yeah. And so she does the walk of shame back to her sorority house and runs into her the sorority, the queen of the sorority gives her a dressing down for sneaking in, and then her roommate, who she has a difficult time with, reminds her, "It's your birthday. Have a cupcake." And she goes, "No, I'm not going to have any part of that cupcake." Throws it down. Eventually, you'll find out she's having an affair with one of her professors. She's not a nice person. She's and actually, this is sort of the same story that you run into with Bill Murray,
right?
Groundhog's Day,
right?
And the Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow. Is that these are unlikable characters to start with,
right?
So on the way to a party, she runs into a guy in a hoodie with this creepy baby mask. And after like poking fun at him for looking like a total loser, he stabs her to death. And then she wakes up again in the dorm room, and so it's rinse and repeat. So
with the guy,
with the same kid in the dorm room, and this
her name is still Tree.
Her name is still Tree. And she
sadly
goes through this process,
and her parents live in Southeast Portland.
Yeah, who's the guy who
the hell names their kid Tree?
River. So she goes through the process multiple times,
right?
And each time she's trying to figure out who her killer is, because once she learns that she's somewhat invincible,
right?
She does all kinds of things to try and suss out. Goes through her whole suspect list. After a little while, she figures out that she's getting weaker with each subsequent death, and so she's running out of time, running out of chances. And
she needs to level up.
Yeah,
she needs an extra man,
and she
get to 10,000 points.
She needs an ally.
Come on, Tree.
But it's a lot of fun, and I think that what it is, it isn't bloody. Yeah. But there's real jump scares. There's real violence. There's times where the part of the fun of a rinse and repeat film like this is you see all the little details, and you try and figure out which of these little details is going to become important down the road. Right. And so the director had some real clever twists, figured it out, and it's a pop horror movie done really well. I haven't seen one that's this much fun, right? In a while, particularly in a PG-13 kind of a movie.
So do you get to know who the killer is?
Yes.
Okay.
You find out.
Which would be there's Happy Death Day Part 2 in production in theaters in 2019.
Well, such as the Blumhouse model is that you do the movie for $8 million and the thing makes $70 million in the theaters, and then you're going to get a remake.
We're rich. We need to be more rich.
Ruling it. Yeah, just
we need to be more rich.
Covered in bills.
Okay, so, I want to see Happy Death Day. I know, and we have reviewed it. Yes,
yes. So check the
scariestthings.com. 1T.
Yep.
Yes, go read the review.
So hope for the PG-13 horror movie after getting really disappointed with a couple of downers. I think the important thing with this PG-13 movie, and I think most of the PG-13 movies in my list, they're fun, because I think that if you try and make it too dour, it's just without sort of the dread and the violence.
That's where the R.
Yeah,
that's where the R comes.
Mike.
All right, I'm going to go for my fearsome foursome number 4. I'm going to go back a little ways, as I always do in time, to 1982, seminal year for horror. This is a film called One Dark Night.
Whoa.
This is an American sort of supernatural horror film featuring Meg Tilly and the Batman, Adam West.
Yeah.
So it's it's
R.I.P. Adam West.
I know.
Hey, speaking of snubs in memoriam, Adam West not listed in memoriam.
I know. What the hell?
Fuck.
So this is a film. It involves 6 girls who are found murdered in the apartment of this famed Russian occultist. See, we told you Russians are bad. We've been telling you this. And the police can't explain what happened. But as they're taking the famed Russian occultist out of the building, these lightning bolts shoot out of his fingers, and things happened. And long story short, in a somewhat unrelated piece of exposition, a group of high school kids that want to be part of a club called the Sisters are dared to sneak into. It's sort of the snobby socialite girls. They are dared to sneak into a mausoleum, and a couple of the girls dress up in costumes. They try to sneak back into the mausoleum. Long story short, they wake up. Raymar, the famed Russian occultist.
Raymar?
Raymar, the Russian occultist. The Russian occultist, of course, breaks out of his coffin. He controls rotting corpses. So there's kind of a...
So Adam West is Raymar?
No, Adam West is not Raymar.
Oh, okay.
Sadly. But...
Awesome.
Adam West just plainly plays one of the dads of one of the girls.
Okay.
But Raymar is not only a Russian occultist, he is a sort of he's Russian occultist psychic vampire who has the ability, I'm doing a lot of hand gestures here, has the ability to control corpses.
Nice.
In the mausoleum, and of course he throws the corpses on the girls and smothers them and everything else, and it's a fun movie. I remember seeing it. I pretty vividly remember seeing it in 1982. Group of junior high kids in the theater because they couldn't get into whatever the hot well, probably, I don't know, Porky's or something like that. They couldn't get into Porky's, so this was the next step down. This is where you were ultimately. The cattle call went. Older kids went to the right. The younger kids went to the left. I went to the left. Saw One Dark Night. I did go through and look at some of the reviews because I do remember bits and pieces of it. I honestly haven't seen it since 1982. But
fond memory.
A lot of people
kind of shadowy memory.
Yeah, a lot of people called it, sort of the guilty pleasure that's horrible. Well, this was specifically Dread Central rated it. They gave it 4 out of 5 stars. They called it the guilty pleasure that's horrible in an endearing way.
Aww.
So this was both a gateway film, an introduction film, and kind of that film that was like, all right, so the horror movies, it's maybe not necessarily just a killer. You could have a Russian occultist, psychic, vampire, wizard, zombie controlling fiend. You could have all these elements, and that was what I always liked about One Dark Night, and the fact that it.
Did you find it scary?
I remember being kind of freaked a little bit in the theater, save for the fact that there was, I was watching it with, 200 other, 12-year-old kids who were, laughing and screeching and cackling and so forth and so on. But yeah, I did. I thought it was good. I really liked One Dark Night, and you should watch it.
Right.
And maybe I will again too. I don't know. I may never in my lifetime go back and watch it again.
26 years ago? 36 years ago?
36
years ago. Ay. Woo! Old man Campbell. Mm-hmm. But I'm right there with you. All right, so Eric's number 3 is, I think, an authentically terrifying movie. It's a remake of a 1955 classic. This is 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, guess what? We got a crossover.
Okay.
We have our first crossover.
Ding, ding, ding.
Which is technically our 4th. I am trying to keep mental track of how many crossovers.
Like 6 at this point.
6? Yeah. Okay, let's call it 6.
So
this is our 6th crossover.
We ran into each other here. So this is...
truly terrifying.
Yeah. Donald Sutherland, Leonard Nimoy, Brooke Adams, Veronica Cartwright, and Jeff Goldblum. I didn't realize Jeff Goldblum's that old, but he's...
Yeah. He's doing stuff like in the 60s.
Yeah. I think like he did Death Wish and some of these, but this is one of the best tales of paranoia ever put to film.
Yeah.
It is...
way better than the original.
Yeah.
Way better.
This one's kind of... It feels like it's part pandemic part Red Scare. The first movie was complete Red Scare. This is a who do you trust? And I think that it really gets to the subtleties of, someone who's like, that's not my husband, that's not my sister. There's something's wrong, and then you see everybody else turning into these emotionless, creeps at this point.
But in addition to the sort of the allegory to the Red Scare, I think it also at the time, because that was the big ticket in the 70s, was sort of the ecology movement. And I think there was sort of that element too, which is this sort of unseen force that's controlling everybody that people simply don't know how to get their hands on. And it manifested itself in this sort of weird plant-like mutation that created the pod people that ultimately created more pod people.
Right. And
so you had that sort of ecological dynamic.
Well, and the fact that it was essentially it's a fungal bloom.
Right.
And, and it was like the plants are coming back to reclaim the earth.
Yep.
Stuff like that. So, I think that this had some super, blow your mind creepy things. The man-faced dog. Mm-hmm. Oh my Jesus, that had me running from the room. I think I was because I remember seeing this on a little black and white television, and I screamed and ran out of the room. It was just that was more than I could handle.
Yeah.
And the fact that you'd see these body doubles.
Yeah.
And then they would and it was just, if you fell asleep, they'd come get you. It was you couldn't get away from them, and then there was like this. There was a containment where the whole city of San Francisco, like the first one was a small town where everybody knows everybody, right? And this is San Francisco, where it's a city full of strangers.
Right. The dynamics exponentially went up and up and up.
Right. And did you realize that there was a return of the 1955 protagonist? Kevin McCarthy was a guy who goes stumbling into a car. And it's like they're everywhere. They're coming to get you, which was his closing statement at the first Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And then he gets totally plowed into by a car. He gets killed, and nobody on the street reacts because they're pod people. It's very, very weird.
Right.
The whole thing that there was also this whole 70s thing of wanting to be able to stand out from the crowd, and that the body snatchers were conformity and emotionless, soulless beings. And so there's another little allegory that was running.
But speaking of the end of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, so the first one ends in a really interesting way. The second one, I think, is far more terrifying. You go from the male-female dynamic to, the woman, the main character, Nancy, realizes that her friend Matthew,
Donald
Sutherland, is now a pod person, and she stands basically the only human left in the city and just screams out loud like this is it. I'm the last person.
And the implication is
left.
That was it. Lights out. End credits.
Which is, boy, what a dark ending. The original was very dark. I actually went back and watched, because I was reading about the ending. I was doing the research for this. Went back and rewatched the ending. Woo!
Yeah,
scary. And man, talk about a great soundtrack.
Yeah,
great soundtrack. Invasion of the Body Snatchers has all those wonderful 70s atmospheric elements.
It is a stunning looking movie. It is impeccably acted. So I take it back. That this one was not light. This one was heavy.
Oh yeah, I tried to get my oldest son to watch this a year or two ago, and he was like, "Yeah, hard pass." Yeah. Not because he was bored, because his dad was making him watch yet another film from the 70s, but he said hard pass because it was too terrifying.
Yep.
It was too terrifying. So it's a PG film. Gateway, maybe not gateway.
Yeah, this one is
on the edge.
This one may be. This is for the adventurous gateway person. If you think that you're ready for something seriously scary, and you don't want to watch something that's really bloody, this one is a perfect kind of a introduction to horror. Yeah. Or if you if you couldn't wrangle your son to try and watch it, it's worth a shot, because this is one. It ages really, really well.
Always indoctrinate your children.
So that was my number 3.
That's why you have them.
You will do what I say.
You will do what I say. So I'm going to go up 1 year, not from 1978, but from 1982. I'm going to go to 1983 with a film which is based on a Ray Bradbury book. Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh, yeah.
This was actually a Walt Disney film, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And it was the same kind of thing. I remember seeing it in the theater going, there's something to this.
Creepy carnival.
It's a creepy carnival. It is the name of the carnival, which should have been, the dead giveaway. It was Mr. Dark's Pandemonium Carnival, which, if Mr. Dark's Pandemonium Carnival comes to your town, do not go. But this is an interesting film. It has Jason Robards, great actor, Diane Ladd, and Pam Grier.
Really?
Pam Grier is in this film. Yeah, believe it or not. The film, the film had a lot of troubled production. Disney sidelined, the director. They fired the original editor. They scrapped the original score. They spent tons of money. They reshot a bunch of stuff. They re-edited a bunch of stuff. They rescored a bunch of stuff. So it was kind of a mess in that regard. But the film itself is really good. It's a period piece, I think, set in like the 20s, 30s, and the carnival comes to town. And ultimately, the whole point of the carnival coming to town is to, prey on, sort of prey on the wants, needs, desires, and excesses of the people of this community for the purposes of stealing their soul. And essentially, Mr. Dark of the Pandemonium Carnival, he promises people, or at least creates the illusion that they can have what they want. The football player who's lost his arm gets to grow his arm. The old woman who feels sad and lonely and no longer part of the community gets to be young and pretty. But in return, she loses her eyesight, and so it's sort of a
lot of Faustian deals.
A lot of Faustian deals, but it's presented in a really kind of interesting way, and it's sort of done through the eyes of a couple of young boys who sort of the young boys work to save their families and friends in the face of all of these, these basically sideshow freaks who are trying to seize all these innocent souls, so that they can damn these innocent souls. But they're all the while they're preying on people's sort of hopes and fears, and they're preying on it in kind of in a really malevolent way.
Yeah, I remember this movie vaguely because this was the reward that my 8th grade class got for selling magazine subscriptions.
There you go.
You remember when in junior high school that you had to sell candy bars or magazine subscriptions in the school?
Or both.
And the thing was that the school would take a little on the side in this crass commercial appeal. But what we would get was a movie at the end. First year we did it, we got Condor Man, which sucked.
Yeah.
And then we got...
Also a Disney film.
We got Superman the movie, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
And then we got Something Wicked This Way Comes. And there you go. I remember just being entranced by it.
Right.
Half the kids had to bail out because they couldn't take it.
Right.
It was just too spooky for them. Come on.
There are some freaky elements because you have the sideshow freaks. You have Mr. Dark, who's a terrifying person. But then you have, I think, this realization, amongst all the townspeople that kind of their greed and avarice.
It was sort of a fairy tale in that way, like a Grimm's fairy tale, where the Little Mermaid gets her wish, but it doesn't really pay out the way she wants it to.
Right.
Not the Disney one, but the Hans Christian Andersen one. Yeah. Be careful what you ask for; you just might get it.
100%. Be careful what you ask for because something wicked
this way
comes.
Fabulous name for it.
Yes.
For a book, fabulous name for a movie.
Yes. All right. So what do you got for your number 2 on the fearsome foursome?
So this is another movie that actually it's fairly recent. This is 2009. One of
You're sticking with the recent stuff.
I got Invasion of the Body Snatchers a little bit.
Sure.
But this is mentioned it last. A couple of episodes ago when we talked about favorite directors.
Right.
This is a Sam Raimi production.
Oh, yeah.
This is Drag Me to Hell. And
yes.
sometimes you forget that it's not an R-rated movie.
It sure seems like it. I mean, just the word hell alone should make it R-rated.
That's right. Check. But this is a classic case of story above all else. It's a simple fable, and the moral of the story is don't piss off the gypsy witch. And Sam Raimi had at this point in his career had graduated beyond. That doesn't sound fair because as much I adore the Evil Dead movies, but he had been doing A Simple Plan. He did the Spider-Man movies. Yeah. He was doing other kinds of stuff, and then this was his return back to horror.
Right.
And interestingly, he decided because famously, Evil Dead 1 is one of the all-time video nasties that was banned in Britain. It was branded got an X rating to begin with.
Right.
So this movie, you would suspect it's probably going to be lighter on its feet, but it's a mean, fun, scary movie. We went to see this in the theaters together.
Yeah, we did. And Drag Me to Hell is full of Raimi-isms.
Oh, absolutely. This is
between the acting, some comedic elements, some of the sort of point of view film work, and then of course just like the
vomiting and
the vomiting, but then the big punchline.
Yeah,
the punchline.
The punchline at the end, which we won't spoil for you. It's fantastic. But the story here is Alison Lohman plays Christine, who's a junior loans officer in a mortgage lending institution, and she's covetous of a promotion. And there's this ne'er-do-well new guy who's also she's competing with to get the accounts manager's job. And her boss goes, well, you need to make some tough decisions, make some tough calls so that I can trust you. And she picks the wrong person to get tough with. This old Romanian woman named Mrs. Ganush. And you know that Mrs. Ganush is more than she seems when she looks at you, and she's got eyes that are like, one's half dead and the other one's like wandering around.
Don't mess with gypsies.
And Mrs. Ganush gets on her knees and begs for an extension on her mortgage.
And the young loan officer says, "No, Mrs. Ganush."
She goes, "Security!" And later on, Mrs. Ganush
curse was born.
Yeah, but not before you had this fun old lady versus young woman throwdown involving involving a concrete block and just being getting her buttons ripped off, and her button gets cursed.
The Raimi-isms.
Yeah, and it was those point of view, the kinds of camera shots, so much fun. And my favorite moment is when Alison Lohman is lying in bed. Christine's trying to go to sleep, and a fly zooms around and lands on her forehead and crawls in her nose, in through one nostril, out through another nostril. She's not woken up yet, and then it crawls into her mouth, and she starts coughing, and it's and then she wakes up, and there's a young directors, take note. This is how you do a jump scare.
Yes.
Sam Raimi does jump scares better than anybody else.
Yes.
And they're real jump scares. They're not these false ones. They don't have it's
open the door, close the door, open the door.
It's not something hiding around the corner. Yeah. It's pulling the camera back, focusing on something else, coming back to the picture, and then something you don't expect to be in the in the scene. Doesn't require a lot of loud noise.
Yeah.
But it's like something just drastically changed in front of my face, and it's horrifying. And then the witch just like vomits a bunch of bugs on her. It's it is creepy stuff. And this pushes the limits of PG-13, but I think it's fair PG-13. I think this is
absolutely. There's no nudity. There's no foul language, save for the word hell. Right. I don't know how they got away with that. There's not a lot of gore. I think that some of the rules with like PG-13, and when you see things like the Pacific Rim, right,
or you see with the Transformers movies, or you see with anytime you're fighting any of the Marvel superheroes things, you can if it doesn't bleed red, You can make it bleed a bunch, or you can bust up robots. There's going to be tons of violence, as long as you're not bleeding red. And in this case,
we need to we need to get Jack Valenti in here to explain the modern day rating system to us.
Yeah,
Jack Valenti, if you're listening to the Scariest Things podcast and you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, and you're not dead yet, which we still haven't confirmed.
Preferably if you're alive.
We want although undead Jack Valenti would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Zombie Jack Valenti explaining the MPAA movie rating system. We'll take it.
So this is Sam Raimi gleefully pushing the limits of PG-13, and it's funny, it's fun, it's scary. It's another one of those. I tried to pick legitimately scary gateway films for you people. Yeah. To say you can get real scares.
I think you're
without the violence. It's hard. You have to go hunting for it, but they're there.
You're 3 for 3.
Thank you.
3 for 3.
So,
all right,
you're number 2.
So my number 2, which is my number 1, since we already went through, the Donald Sutherland joint, is the 2010 PG-13 film Troll Hunter.
Yay!
Also known as Trollgären.
I thought that Troll Hunter was. I thought Troll Hunter was
the Troll Hunter.
I thought that was an R-rated movie.
It is not an R-rated film. This is a great. I think, maybe one of the best, and we might get to this at a later date. Maybe one of the best found footage films of all time. It's sort of a mockumentary that basically they cast a bunch of somewhat unknown actors and then these sort of Norwegian comedians and kind of paired them all up together in this group. And so it involves a group of university students who sets out to make a very short, simple documentary about a bear poacher. And they go out into the woods looking for the bear poacher, and they find these bear tracks, and they go, I don't think these are bear tracks.
Too big to be bears.
I think something else is going on here. And, lo and behold, they discover that it's a troll. And, the troll attacks them. And, they decide, so the group decides to go back out. And they put troll stench on them, which is this, weird, slimy, grody liquid that you squeeze out of trolls. It's something sort of a mucousy, seamy, pussy, sweaty mess of stuff. They put the troll stench on them, but not before they do the most critical of all checks when you're troll hunting, to figure out if the members of the party are Christians or not, because the trolls do not like Christians. And apparently the trolls, above and beyond just being these massive hulking beasts, also have the uncanny ability to smell Christian blood, which I don't know how that's possible, but the trolls know how to do it. The whole thing goes through. It goes through a series of sort of peck and hunt and find the trolls, and videotape the trolls and observe the trolls in their natural habitat. The group ultimately learns of this one massive troll named Jontar. He's the giant mountain troll. He's 100 meters tall. For those of you,
Trollzilla. He's
that would be 300 feet, roughly 333 feet. They eventually kill Jontar, or they think they kill Jontar, and the epilogue to the film. The film ends with this great sort of news clip of the actual Norwegian Prime Minister appearing to admit the existence of trolls. Even though
government secrets.
The media fails to take notice of the fact that the Prime Minister just said trolls are real.
Fake news.
No one paid attention because it was fake news.
I love Troll Hunter. I have a Troll Hunter shirt from
Everyone should have a Troll Hunter shirt.
Yeah, that it's all in Norwegian. I adored that film. It was as shaky cam footage goes. It's an old trope of documentarians in the woods. Mm-hmm. But when you're panning across something and you just get a glimpse, this was like Cloverfield, right? Mm-hmm. There's something so big and monstrous that you sort of make things out of the corners of the screen, and then you fill in the blanks with your imagination, but when they do show the trolls, they are impressive.
Right.
And they're mean.
And, the other thing I thought that Troll Hunter did really well that films like Pacific Rim and Transformers and others don't do well is that they actually, they give you the glimpse, then they show you the whole thing, and you see the whole thing, and it's clear, and they don't obscure it with all sorts of unnecessary CGI. So you see the whole troll. I mean, not unlike The Host, not unlike Cloverfield. These are both films that they show you the whole troll, and they show it to you contextually with the landscape, and it doesn't look weird. Right. And there's not a lot of, funky tricks that they use to show you the troll. They just show you the troll, which is so much more satisfying.
And the big fella
than all these
the
super fast jump cuts with just insane amounts of CGI that there is absolutely no way to follow or for your mind to process.
Yeah. Troll Hunter. Go see it.
Back in my day, they didn't use CGI. All right, so what is your number one on the fearsome foursome list?
Well, I was mentioning to Mike before we started that there are some real obvious number one selections that you could do, or one the much beloved, well-known
that we've covered
PG movies, Jaws,
Poltergeist.
And I think the third one on this list, The Ring.
Oh, I forgot. The Ring is PG-13. PG-13.
Some of the scariest imagery in any movies. Mike had mentioned in his favorite horror moments. The horse scene. That stays with you. That is, and
dread and doom.
Yeah, for those of you, I have to run on the assumption that if you're a horror movie fan, you've seen The Ring. If you're listening to this and this is your gateway, The Ring is a fantastic gateway horror movie to test your ability to handle scary. Because I think that
at that point you're in or you're out.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite movie critics, Justin Bibiani, had a list of horror movie PG rated horror movies, and said, it's nominally a horror movie, but Monster Squad really, or Tremors, or Critters, or Gremlins, some of those things. Yeah. And they're not really scary, like 20 to 30, 40% scary.
Right.
And on the right-hand side of the scale was The Ring, which is like 95% scary.
Right.
And it is a wet your pants scary moment when Samara crawls out of the well.
Yep.
Crawls out of the damn television set. You're going, oh, what? And, the idea, and this is sort of a Japanese horror movie trope, is that you can't escape...
Water and hair.
Well, water and hair, and you can't escape your pursuers.
Right. Yes. There's nowhere you can go, there's nowhere you can hide.
The whole notion of you've watched this tape, and those who watch it will eventually... The Samara will come out and kill you, and trying to dodge that fantastical bullet, so to speak, is that it's that dread and how you pawn that thing off, or how do you get rid of it? How do you shed this horrible being? It is Naomi Watts is fantastic in this movie. I don't know that she's done anything better since, but it is It's a landmark in.
We're going to talk about Naomi Watts in just a second. And I'm not joking.
Yeah,
I am not joking.
So with I won't belabor too much about The Ring because we've discussed it before. Yeah. I think
it is truly the make or break. Yeah. Like if you see this film and go, "Ooh, there's something here. I want more of this." Yeah. You're in.
Yeah,
if you see this film and you say, "Hell no, get me out of the theater. I am never going to watch a horror movie again."
The Ring has the potential to emotionally scar you for a decade. You may wet yourself watching The Ring.
This is the gateway.
If you're a scaredy cat and you can stay in the room for this one, you get a medal.
Just like gateway drugs. If you go, That was kind of fun.
That was a rush.
I want to try something else.
And you won't stop.
Or if you go, holy crap, that was terrifying. I want none of this. That's the ultimate gateway.
So,
all right, so let's get to the dead undead list. You want me? I'll go. I'll go first since I queued up the perfect segue with Naomi Watts.
So this is your dead or your undead?
This is my undead. This is the film that you should see. Sort of following in the same, sort of following in on the sort of same concept. Although this is PG-13. It is kind of one of the ultimate gateway films, The Birds.
Oh!
The 1963 sort of psychological horror thriller film. That
almost put it on here, and then I realized it predated the 68.
It did predate. It had, it was a great film in that, The Birds, these swarming, violent, malevolent creatures descending on, Bodega Bay and terrorizing the people of the town, had all this great allegory again to the Red Scare. It had allegory to sort of pre-allegory to,
and it's Alfred Hitchcock,
the ecology movement. So it had all these great allegorical pieces and parts, and then it was just damn frightening. In 2016, I did not know this. The Birds was, as the Library of Congress often does with the National Film Registry,
AFI,
not the MPAA. They deemed this one of the most culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant films in the country, and it was selected for preservation. There's a lot.
Just the fact when Tippi Hedren's walking outside and everything's just covered in birds.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, powerful.
I actually got to go down to Bodega Bay 2 years ago, and we made a little side trip because there's a lot of the stuff was shot in Bodega Bay, and then a lot of the stuff is shot down the road about 15 or so miles. Can't even remember the name of the city, where they have the church and the house and the playground. All that stuff is still there. We went and did a little side trip and went and saw it all. But here's the Naomi Watts connection. In 2007, Variety magazine reported that Naomi Watts was going to take part in the remake of the film. Of course, Tippi Hedren said, "What the hell? That's dumb." And of course, development stalled. Writers were in and out.
I had no idea that was that fell apart.
Yeah, it didn't happen. And eventually, they brought on some guy from Dimension Films to work on it, and then he couldn't do it, and then they brought in another guy.
So it's like The Crow, currently in purgatory
forever.
Can't get out of the gate. Remake of The Crow.
Yeah. So The Birds will never be remade.
Shouldn't.
And it's probably a good thing.
Although one of the things that it really makes me wish.
Yeah.
It makes me wish that Alfred Hitchcock came a little bit later and was able to run through the 70s and maybe the 80s and do some horror movies in that time period, because
I think he would have been really challenged. Not challenged in the pejorative. I think he really would have been
taken up the challenge.
I think he would have been up for the challenge, and I think he could have taken from the Romeros, the Argentos, the Tobe Hoopers, and figure out a way to take some of those video nasty elements and turn them into stuff that was truly terrifying.
Singularly stunning shots.
Yeah.
And his
family plot ain't that scary.
Right. All right. So my undead.
Undead.
I was thinking about putting this into this list until I found out it was rated R, and I didn't. It's like, what? This is this one goes the other way. The Frighteners.
Oh yeah.
It's fun. I mean, it has this. It's a romp. And
Frighteners is 1999. 99. Okay. Yeah.
And that Peter Jackson directed this movie with Michael J. Fox, John Astin of Gomer from
Gomez.
The Gomez from the Addams Family.
Come on.
Jeffrey Combs, who I talked about recently, one of my all-time favorite horror actors.
Yep.
Chi McBride and Jake Busey. And so the idea behind this is that Michael J. Fox is trying to, he makes friends with some ghosts, and he's a charlatan, and he convinces these ghosts that that he's trying to help him out do fake exorcisms, and they make a ruckus, and then he makes a good bit of money just as a fake exorcist until he runs into the real deal. Right, and that's the it sort of challenges the snaky dude to actually be honorable, and these ghosts who are like,
don't trust snaky dudes.
But I found this movie to be. I think this is a gateway film. It's a rated R gateway film. I think that you can bend the genre a little bit. I think there's a little bit of more violence than I think that you might get from a PG-13 movie. But I think in spirit, it's a gentler movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and Peter Jackson really knows how to spin a good script. Yeah, it looks beautiful too.
And Alex P. Keaton is
Marty. So, what's your dad? What have you seen you would like to forget?
Which is also a gateway kind of film, is the 1977 thriller horror film called The Car, featuring James Brolin. It's a great trailer. If you watch the trailer, it's got all those awesome. So
is this like The Hitcher then, or something like that?
No. It basically involves this mysterious car that goes that terrorizes this small town in, I think, New Mexico or Arizona, and it's like this kind of souped up, super dark, super black, kind of Cadillac-ish looking vehicle that just inexplicably terrorizes the town. Long story short, they don't really explain why, other than you discover as they blow the car up at the end. They do the classic standing on the edge of the cliff, and the car charges towards them and flies off the cliff, and they dynamite the whole thing, and on and on and on. You discover this sort of this like demonic vision that comes out of the smoke and clouds, and they cut into the future, and you see the same car in downtown Los Angeles terrorizing people. So it's a demonic car. Great trailer. It's got James Brolin. I think I said that. It's got James Brolin. It's got some pretty good film work, some pretty fun sort of car chase stuff a la the 1970s. But the film itself is just doesn't quite have it.
I would say the same thing for its close cousin Christine.
Yes,
which is a bit sacrilegious. As much as I love John Carpenter, it was not. It was. I couldn't buy the fact that it's an evil car, and then it's not scary. It wasn't scary.
Cars aren't scary,
except for Jeepers Creepers.
Oh yeah,
and maybe The Duel.
Yeah.
Right. So
all right. So what do you got for your dead? Stay dead.
This movie, not watch again. This movie, I blame Campbell for.
Yes.
We saw this at the Hollywood Theater.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
Stink is still on me. I haven't gotten off the foul stench of Return to Nukem High. This is about...
Not Nukem High. This is Return. If you didn't hear Eric, he...
I'm saying this softly because...
Burrowed Frau,
I'm afraid...
head and chest. He said, Return to Nukem High.
Volume 1.
Volume 1.
And I say this mutedly because I'm ashamed to say that we went to see this movie.
Although we did get to see Lloyd Kaufman, and I got to be in the same room as Lloyd Kaufman, and so that was worth the price of admission.
We cheered initially, and afterwards I was like, "What the fuck was I thinking?" This guy is P.T. Barnum.
He's the ultimate huckster.
What can I say?
Huckster,
this is about as bad a movie as it is possible to make.
And certainly not a gateway film.
Don't see this movie.
This is the extra deep dive.
Take my word for it. So the story, as if I need to explain a story here, is that radiation is turning Trauma High, the students of Trauma High, into mutant gang members
again.
And then there is also
the return.
Yeah.
Because it already happened.
Yeah, and the nuclear power plant is trying to ship a bunch of nuclear waste into the school cafeteria.
Which is what nuclear power plants do.
And
always.
This has to be hands down the worst editing of a movie I have ever seen.
Very possibly.
There are whole plot elements that just sort of drop off the face and are never returned to again.
And worst of all, It was the first of a whole series that they planned to do.
Yeah, they
Returning to Nukem High.
They did a second one. Nothing also quite as awkward as sitting in a movie and then having this softcore porn movie show up about halfway through, and you're sitting there saying,
and the realization that this is just the first one.
So bad. I think there are some defenders of this who say that it's like it pops the bubble of political correctness and all this kind of stuff. No, it's in politics to be sure, but it is totally pointless. The satire is way off. The gore is unconvincing,
yes,
and it makes me rethink my past fondness for trauma films. I think that is
that's sad.
It's a huge disappointment.
We're going to correct that. All right, let's go down our list.
But did you do your did
what?
We get you dead?
Yeah,
we did. That was
the car.
Okay.
The car. Let's go down our list of our fearsome foursome. Okay. Why don't you go first?
PG and PG-13 gateway horror movies. Eric's list. Number 4, Happy Death Day from 2017, which just hit Amazon and YouTube for rent.
Yep.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978.
Yep.
Scary movie, no matter how you cut it, any rating, any generation.
Yep.
Drag Me to Hell, 2009. Sam Raimi's grand return to horror.
Yes.
And some of the best storytelling that you will run into in horror films.
Absolutely.
And then the powerful movie The Ring, 2002, directed by Gore Verbinski. Again, about as scary a movie as you'll run into regardless of rating.
Yep.
Michael.
All right. My number 4 was One Dark Night from 1982, featuring the Adam West, also known as the Batman. 1983's Something Wicked This Way Comes, featuring the Jason Robards and the Pam Grier. 1978's
wow, how does that work?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers, featuring tons of people. And, of course, the 2010 film Troll Hunter, featuring a bunch of people whose names I cannot pronounce.
Jürgen Yerschner.
Yes. All right, I think this is our longest. This is officially our longest podcast. Yeah. If you hung with us for the last hour, thank you so much.
So we'll leave you with this, kids. It doesn't do any good to sneak into a PG-13 movie. It's not worth the karmic void.
Wait a couple years.
Right.
Wait a couple years.
Sneak into the R-rated movie instead.
All right.
Until next time.